Imagine this. You're working on a construction project and accidentally damage a client's property. Without insurance, you could be held responsible for the repair costs. And what about the unforeseen accidents that can happen on a job site? Construction projects come with their fair share of risks. If a third party gets injured, you could be facing medical expenses, legal fees, or even potential settlements. But with construction liability insurance, those expenses are covered, saving you from a significant financial burden. So, if you're a general contractor, renovation expert, or construction professional, don't leave your business vulnerable. Nail down the low-cost construction liability insurance you need and get a certificate of insurance quickly. And get a free quote now by visiting zensurance.com/save35. Zensurance is Canada's leading source for small business and construction liability insurance. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have
Lindsey Cole, DCN and JOC editor.
And as always, we're here to talk about what's happening in the East and the West. Let's start with the East. Lindsey, what are some interesting stories happening out there?
Oh, we got a really interesting cross-section this week that is going to, obviously be on the website and mentioned in this podcast, but it's, I always say this, there's never a dull moment. So we have some pretty quirky and newsworthy stories, obviously, coming out this week. So one thing to keep an eye on, it's been in headlines all over the place, but is the ongoing debate regarding Ontario Place.
Mhm.
So as we all know, there is a massive spa planned for that area. And as a result, there's a lot of groups that are in opposition to it. So that's one facet of the story. So Don Wall's working on it right now, and we can anticipate it'll be out in the next day or so. But essentially, what's very interesting that I think directly relates to the industry is the fact that they're actually name shaming some of these groups.
Oh, wow.
To the point where they're actually mentioning the architect and shaming them, and putting signs that saying like "Shame on Diamond Schmidt for Ontario Place," and so I thought it would be interesting, and Dawn agreed to kind of reach out to see what Diamond Schmidt might be thinking about this, that it's not abnormal for projects to come under fire, and for obviously there's many things out there that have oppositions to it. We've covered pipeline protests, you name it out there.
But it's the developer or the government that usually, or the developer is the government sometimes, in this case probably. Yeah, those are the guys that get focused on most of the time.
Most of the time. So I thought it was interesting that Diamond Schmidt was specifically referenced, and I think we're taking a look at the issue of the fact, like, is that fair that they're being really mentioned, because they've produced these renderings for this project, they're obviously involved in the design elements. So but at the end of the day, it's a very politicized issue, and maybe it is more, maybe some of the opposition should be more directed towards the government involvement, and maybe the developer, but so it's kind of an interesting take. It's not something you see regularly, for example, especially in out here. So yeah, stay tuned for that piece, because that's got a little bit of a controversial element to it, if you will. Another one that we're working on that's creating a lot of buzz, and you'll see why this is so funny.
All right.
Is there is a $16.1 million honeybee research center that is coming together at the University of Guelph. Basically, some workers are starting to do some excavation work on site, and it's a really beautiful project when you take a look at its renderings. It has a fairly modern and sleek exterior, and but it actually serves a fairly important purpose too. So we've got a project story on how on what's involved in the project, as well as how it's come to be, because come to be, I didn't even mean to do that, but it's been a long time in coming. And right now the research center that they have at Guelph is out of an old bungalow. So this will be obviously a game changer for the stakeholders involved in the project. So definitely something that is not something we write about every day, but it's certainly a great institutional project. So that's pretty interesting on the eastern side of things. We also have a story that's out already about a bridge project in Kingston.
Hmm.
It's a bascule bridge, so it's a kind of a landmark bridge for the area, and it's a pretty standout item. It's getting completely rebuilt. So Landform Civil Infrastructures, who's from Hamilton, is been taking on the reconstruction and rehabilitation of the project. So
Hmm.
um, it's an $8.8 million contract, and it's kind of slated to completely redo this historic bridge in the area that I'm sure anyone from Eastern Ontario is fairly familiar with. So pretty cool project story about what's going into that, and how actually the original structure is very unique as well. So something to look for there.
Hmm.
So those are some key items from the east. On the western front, we have a couple of interesting legal stories that have
Hmm.
surfaced. Um, you can give a thumbs up or thumbs down to this one,
Oh
Warren,
God! All
but
right, it's just getting worse. But anyway, keep going.
um, there was well, the actual case doesn't necessarily relate to construction. It is precedent setting.
Hmm.
So what happened is in Saskatchewan, a judge recently ruled that a thumbs up emoji can now potentially constitute a legally binding signature on a work contract.
Hmm.
This kind of raised eyebrows, obviously, across the industry. And Chris Atchison from the British Columbia Construction Association commented, saying that it's a cautionary tale for
Hmm.
stakeholders and those who are doing contracts. Um, it goes beyond the written or spoken word now. It can even be an emoji. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, which
um,
sounds crazy and makes sense at the same time. So.
agreed. Yeah, the story itself is kind of interesting, the way this specific case pans out. It seemed like the thumbs up emoji was something he kind of the person involved kind of used regularly. Like that's
Hmm.
how his cadence was when he replied to things, or how his, you know. So it was deemed obviously legitimate when it came
Hmm.
to an agreement to a certain contract. So definitely check that one out, because it's I don't know, something we're gonna have an eye on in the future too, because you just never know when this might pop up again, and you
Yeah,
never know,
exactly.
I
Or
guess.
some other new form of communication, whatever that might be.
Exactly. Um, the other legal issue or story that we've got out now is some environmental groups are causing have issued a legal challenge, I guess, for the massive Roberts Bank terminal project. So it's obviously going through a lot of the government motions and everything, but essentially there's a group of environmental groups that banded together and have filed for a review in federal court, basically saying that this terminal project could essentially impact Chinook salmon, as well as southern resident killer whales,
Hmm.
their habitats. So um, I don't know. I don't think it comes as any surprise that a project of this scope and size is going to have some environmentalists, showing concern
Concerned.
or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
expressing concern. But obviously, they've taken it a step further by taking it to court. So, we have the lawyer for eco justice quoted in the story, as well as the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. They issued a statement in response to the legal action. So um, it's hard to say whether it will tie up the project or not, but it's certainly obviously a hiccup when it comes to um, any type of environmental concerns or assessments. So
Hmm.
we'll have to see how that pans out, and where things go um, regarding this massive. Like it's kind of a game changer for this port authority.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be a big project. So I'll have to see how it pans out over the years as it comes together. But
Okay.
those are kind of the main things that are hitting the newsroom this week. So
Yep. And then we've got 2 interviews coming up. The first one is Angela Gismondi, our staff writer. She interviewed Harley Valentine, who is a partner with Castlepoint Numa. They're putting together Thornbury Acres, which we recently did a story about, and there's a link in the show notes for it. Basically, it's kind of like a condo and a farm at the same time, or a bunch of condos and a farm at the same time, where people sort of collectively work on farm stuff and they live in condos. So it's an interesting mix that people haven't really done before, as far as I know. And our other interview is staff writer Don Wall, who talked to Fred Daviault. They're the CEO of the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, and what the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has recently started doing is they've tried to get more women into the trades, and now they're diversifying further outward to get more underrepresented people generally into the trades. And this, so they've kind of started a new initiative with this, and so Don talked about what that all entails. And so first Angela's interview is coming up, and then Don's.
You know, a residential farm cooperative, which is the policy which is driving this application. Because it is still an application. We're in an approval phase. I think we're narrowing we're narrowing towards a date of approvals, right. And we hope to be in the ground delivering the farm and the barn program in early 2024.
Okay, that's neat.
And really, this site, it's a 152-acre site, and it's a partnership, because we control a 100-acre site that was formerly zoned for a golf course. So we're converting a golf course into the effectively what will be the residential development land. And then the farm aspect is through a partnership that we've done with a neighbor of ours that has a 50-acre parcel, 25 of which has been laying bare, and that we will reactivate through this development. So it's land that was destined to become a golf course that we've acquired and found a higher and better use for. And, you know, I think it really speaks towards sort of a post-COVID climate and this trend towards market gardening and regenerative farming.
For sure. So where's the site located exactly?
Yeah, it's located in town of Blue Mountains, but more specifically in Thornbury. Of course, it's titled Thornbury Acres. And we have our project website in support of that at thornburyacres.com. Okay. And this policy that supports residential farm cooperatives is unique to Grey County. So Thornbury is in town of Blue Mountains, and town of Blue Mountains is in Grey County.
I see. Okay. So it's kind of that law or policy that has allowed you to do this there. Could you do this anywhere in Ontario?
It's a very good question. There's no reason why you couldn't. Thornbury Acres is sort of a blueprint. We benefit from an existing policy underneath at the county level. But that policy really sets an interesting set of guidelines, which is 60% of the land needs to be set aside for either recreation or agricultural-based uses. So out of our 150 acres, we have 90 acres dedicated to a combination of agriculture and passive recreation. So you need a critical mass of land to really be able to deliver on this type of community. Really 150 acres is probably the minimum to make it work. But if you had, let's say, 100 to 200 acres plus of rural land, this is a great program to activate, those forgotten sites that sort of straddle the settlement boundary, right? You're just outside, let's say, you benefit from the proximity for all the amenities, but you're not serviced. Here's an opportunity to convert those lands by way of vacant land condominium. That's the other piece. It's not just planning policies, there's also legal mechanisms that drive the success of this project. Okay. And the vacant land condominium is essentially creates a podal structure so that you own your unit of land at Thornbury Acres. It's 1.5 acres of land, and you're tied to the balance of the 90-acre compound, which is both farm and passive recreation. You're also required to support that through a condominium fee.
Okay, interesting. Okay, but can you give me a bit of background on this, like how it all started, and is it the first project of its kind?
It is the first project of its kind in Ontario. Okay. Other models exist, in BC and throughout the United States, but this is the first of its kind in Ontario. And where does it come from? It comes from a very selfish place, because when we originally acquired the 100 acres, my partner and I were going to build family farms and take 50 acres each. But we realized that was way too much land. There was no way that we were going to be able to manage that. And being in the business, we hired a planner and we opened the book on the policy, and lo and behold, we found really a tool to get what was our impetus or our main inspiration for the site was to, the ability to raise a family in the background of an agricultural culture. And we found an opportunity how we can invite, let's say, 35 other families into that fold. So we have a total of 37 units proposed, so that 37 families could live on this land and share in the land, and also share in the requirements as far as time and financially and benefit from it.
Okay. And other than so you said 37 units?
There's 37 units across 150 acres. We have a 50-acre farm program and 40 acres of passive recreation, which expresses itself through 7 kilometers of trails.
Okay, great. And so how will this work? How do people who are interested, do they just buy a house like they would buy a new build? Like how does the process work?
So if we were to fast forward to the offering and the marketing of the homes, so we will be offering lots from 1.3 to 1.5 acres.
Okay.
And we are expecting that we are going to we'll have a build program where buyers can choose from typologies that we will provide that will follow design guidelines through a selected design architect that will be created in the vein of sort of a agrarian home. Or a homestead, which would be, an alteration on sort of a modern A-frame. And they're going to be offered from, 1,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
It'll be slab on grade construction. And they will be serviced by well and septic.
Interesting. Okay. And so that's kind of down the line. So right now you're in the approvals process, so you haven't received approval for this yet.
That's right. That's right. So we've made an application. We've been deemed complete. We received staff comments, and now we're just waiting for a report and approvals. There is some, this project has definitely piqued the interest of both the supporters, but also those of our detractors. And, there's a bit of a culture war about farming, and what's happening across Ontario today, or rather across Canada, the average farm size is becoming larger. The average age of the farmer is becoming older because of the consolidation that's happening. I think the average farm size, there was an article in CBC recently, it's something like, 600 acres is the average farm size across all of Canada.
Wow. Okay.
So what Thornbury Acres does is that it really underscores the value of small scale farming. And we hope to use it as a launch pad for education and awareness around the power of small scale regenerative farming, and how, there's partners. We have an agricultural advisory board, and on them are active farmers, regenerative farmers. One of the partners is called Harvestman Farms out of Grey County. They have 1 acre and they service 35 families from just 1 acre of land. And they provide them 18 baskets a year of produce.
Right.
So like I said, there's a worldwide trend sort of towards this farming practice that sort of turns its back on commercial farming, heavy machinery, pesticides, and this idea of, high intensity planting, smaller rows, bountiful outputs. So that is really the focus of our farm program, and we hope to use this community as a launch pad to generate further awareness around it.
Okay.
So we're just about to bring on a design architect, and like I said, our vision is that this is going to be a very tightly curated community, and that there will be a number of home typologies that will repeat throughout. Yeah. And there will also be an iconic architectural barn that will sort of anchor and also create a sense of destination for this community.
Okay. So is the barn there, or would you build it? Is there anything there on the land?
There's nothing there. There was a barn. It was burnt down in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
And one of the exciting things about this project is it's going to restore a farm that had previously gone, barren.
Okay.
So we're going to rebuild the barn. We're going to reestablish that farm and then nestle in, as I don't know if you've seen the site plan, basically the 37 units around the farm tucked in behind, so that it's hidden from the road, and that the main visual feature will be a new frontage of active agriculture, approximately 3,000 square feet in length.
So that's what people will see from the road, is that it will look like a farm from the road?
That's right.
Okay, interesting. So do you have any other sort of stipulations or criteria for, when you do bring on the architect that you're going to be asking for?
We're going to be looking for a focus for us is really blending the indoor and the outdoor experience. And we are going to be looking for, and we're shortlisted a number of architects now that can really leverage that. The unique thing about our lot plan that's also demonstrated on the website is that we are protecting for a 30-foot lot buffer on each, what would be the left and right side of each lot and the rear. So what that 30-foot lot buffer does is two things. One is that it's going to create that sense of rural privacy that's typical for larger lots in this area. Let's say if you're on a 25-acre parcel. So there's no need to build fences. We want to be the antithesis to the typical tract housing development that you would encounter through the GTHA. And what we want to do is really leverage this idea that there is a healthy amount of trees on the site, and we want to maintain them where we can. And where they fall within that 30-foot lot buffer, they'll be maintained. That will create privacy, but it'll also create and support our stormwater management plan, because it'll create a bit of an absorption pad. So between you and your neighbor, there'll be 60 feet of natural wooded area. And that's consistent throughout the development.
Right.
So how the architect will respond to, daylight, the solar daylight schedule, how they'll look to maximize those views to some of those stabilized, protected natural buffers will all be important aspects, and that we'll be looking for the architects to really deliver.
Are you releasing the main intersection of this?
So we're at the corner of Grey Road 2 and 40, which is really a bit of a gateway site in the town of Blue Mountains. And we're only about 100 meters away from the Georgian Bay Club, which is a bit of a destination for golf in this region. What the town of Blue Mountains is known for is sort of lifestyle communities. And obviously they've delivered it with golf. It's been delivered with, some of the retirement communities, but this is the first of its kind as far as an intentional agricultural lifestyle community.
Okay. And I was going to ask you something else about the site. So you said it was formerly a farm. Anything else? Or was it all farm before?
No, so there's two pieces. There's the 100-acre site was formerly zoned for a golf course.
Oh, yes, right. You mentioned
and it was never farmed.
Okay.
And then there's a 25-acre section of this land that was a former farm that we'll be restoring and maintaining as a farm. And we'll actually be expanding the agricultural program through this development. So right now, 75% of the land is rural, and we'll be actually expanding the rural from 25 to 50%.
Okay. And so you'll be building houses on the golf, former golf area of the land? Is that accurate?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Some of the benefits, I guess, the overall benefits of this development.
This is a true wellness community. So obviously, we've spoken about the farm. I think it's a bit of a natural, you make some natural assumptions about the benefit of living in proximity to that, of your participation and benefit from the produce that's grown on the site that will be delivered back to the homes through a community supportive agriculture program. And what that is there are 18 baskets a year of fresh produce that we deliver to each household to supplement, their meals and their diets. Beyond that, there's obviously the physical engagement aspect, whether you choose to volunteer on the farm, walking the 7 kilometers trails, or participating in some of the sort of quiet parks that have been sort of designed around the site.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that is, being a bit of a pioneer of living in an alternative community, right? I think, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's neat. Do you have any idea what kind of food will be farmed on that land, or is it up to the residents once they, settle in and stuff?
No, absolutely. So we have a number of crops that we put forward, and I can send you some crop variety lists that we have.
Okay, great.
And the idea is that all these crops have been backed by a report, if you can believe it, an agriculture viability report, which was authored by our agricultural advisory board to support this project. And that was actually a requirement as part of the application, right, to demonstrate to the town that this has been fully researched and backed by science.
Okay, so you spoke about some of the benefits. I was wondering if there have been any challenges to date.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the challenge is getting people up to speed on the demand for this type of lifestyle. Council said to me in our first meeting they couldn't imagine anyone who would want to live here. And believe it or not, we have a wait list of about 200 people from our community website.
Right.
And I think the other challenge is demonstrating that this is actually a viable way of farming. Small-scale regenerative farming is happening across the province with a number of very innovative farmers. The sort of godfather of regenerative farming is a guy named Jean-Marc Fontaine from Quebec. And he has an international bestseller called The Market Gardener. And he's really spurred a movement. And what Thornbury Acres does as a community, it sort of responds to that in so much as giving a group of families an opportunity to sort of share in the benefits and also in the labors to create that closed cycle of sort of farm to fork.
And I was also wondering about next steps. So are you just waiting for the approvals now to go through, or do you have other steps?
That's right. We're waiting for approval, site plan approvals, so that we can secure our site plan and begin the infrastructure delivery and construction phase. And we expect the phasing to lead with the farm and the barn program, and because that will obviously become a touchstone and really give this community identity, because as we mentioned today, there's nothing on the land at all. And then from there, we will use the farm and the barn as really a conduit or a megaphone to the broader community in Southern Ontario to say, come and see us and take a look, and to imagine yourself, being one of these pioneering families to live in a residential farm cooperative.
Do you have a timeline at all for that, or?
Yeah, we expect to be in the ground to deliver the farm start of next year, 2024. So I would say, is it Q3, Q4 that we're starting to go to market with this product?
Okay, but construction starting as early 2024?
Yeah, Q1 2024. Yeah.
Okay. Is it being well received from the municipality? Like, are you getting feedback at all?
Is it being well received? No. The quick answer is no. Not from a staff planning perspective, from the council and from the mayor standpoint. There's a lot of interest, and they see the value. Staff are struggling because this is a policy that they had crafted that they didn't envision looking like Thornbury Acres. And what I mean by that is they said themselves the intent was to get families into farming. But when they said farming, they were thinking commercial farming. And they drafted the policy to support the idea of a farmer and his brother and his cousin living on a piece of land and sharing in resources for that larger tract of land. But the reality is, with the consolidation of farms that's happening across Canada, farmers don't actually live on the land that they farm. They live in some, peripheral municipality, and they have obviously extensive amount of labor that they go to support those farming.
Mm-hmm.
And their cousin and brother are not living on the land with them because they don't need them or they can't afford to pay them because of the labor rates and what they can get with, let's say, offshore labor. So what we're using that previous concept of families into farming and saying, listen, you guys got it all wrong. You got it right, but you had the wrong intent. And it's not a commercial farm. It's actually a regenerative small-scale farm, and it's a number of families that are going to pool in to really make this work.
Yeah, it's like a different twist on that farming.
It's a completely different twist, and it's been very enjoyable to sort of take the pen on this and reimagine it because it's actually serving the exact same purpose that they,
I was wondering if you had any. You said you're going to be retaining an architect soon. Do you have any other of the project team members in line, or is it just you guys so far?
No, we have a full project team. So we have
you do?
Tatum Engineering, we have NAC Landscape Design,
okay,
MHBC Planners, and that's all listed on the website as well.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Obviously, there's some discussion, and this initiative was developed to be more inclusive, including different groups. Talk about how those discussions went and why this decision was made.
Well, first of all, it was a really important step for us, and we found that as leaders in this space, it was important for us to take it because a lot of people had been talking about doing something like this, but we're actually doing it. And the reason we're doing it is because we've had 4 national supporting women in trades conferences that have been extremely successful. And over the 4 or 5 years that we've been doing that, we've had the opportunity to talk to the participants, and which are mostly, half of our participants have been tradespeople over the last 4 or 5 years. So we've had the opportunity to speak to hundreds of them. And what we're hearing is that the topics that we're covering and the opportunities of networking and the opportunities of increasing your skill set and advocating for yourself that happen during these supporting women in trades conferences is really applicable to others who are facing similar barriers. And those people that are facing similar barriers would show up at our events. We're talking about gender diverse individuals that are differently abled, and a lot of these, sometimes are hidden barriers, and so we were talking with the participants who said, this is great. There's so much movement going on. There's momentum. It is now our responsibility to bring others to the table and into this sort of opportunity to feel supported, to find their networks. And so it actually came from the participants themselves over the last, few years. And at the beginning, and also over the last few years, a lot of the sectors have done their own women in trades conferences, like the manufacturing section. There's women in construction, there's women in engineering, so that movement is strong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work and investment being done in that movement. So we felt there is a time now to take that movement and lend a hand up to others who continue to be marginalized.
Yeah. So it's a sign of maturity, and if you've been at it a while, you've got best practices to develop strategies. And I've been reading about some of the strategies. So you're not a fledgling organization just trying to define things, but you've developed ways, and now lots of commonalities with these other groups. As you say, you have a lot in common, and there are some issues that are different. I attended a Zoom meeting, the Native Women's Association of Canada, which includes LGBT plus. And at first I didn't know, and I'll ask you, that was within the organization. So they're defining it, and I say, is that plus all other LGBT plus people joining with Native women, or is it Native women including Native women who belong to that sub-community? So in this case, so it's not women who are all in all these different in these other communities. So the broadly defined members of those people who marginalized or underrepresented.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going bold. And part of the concern initially when we were bouncing this idea around was, okay, well, we don't want to minimize or hinder the work that's been done regarding bringing more women into the trades. And we've always said that bringing more women into the trades is great, but we need to focus on retention and those barriers of why they're leaving in droves. So that's always been our position. But and that work continues to be important. So we're not saying that work is going to stop. What we're saying is the lessons learned, just like you said, the lessons learned and the best practices can be applied to other marginalized groups.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a ton of intersectionality. You were mentioning, women, the Indigenous Women's Association and the 2S LGBTQ+. Like, we don't have to label people. If you are someone working in the trades and you have been marginalized because of who you are, how you identify, your background, then you have a place. And you have a place at this event.
Yeah.
And some of the things that we may talk about, maybe specifically addressing one group, like we may have some breakout sessions for women in the trades, we may have some breakout sessions for racialized people in the trades. But really, in general, what we're trying to get to is, where are the commonalities in terms of the barriers and the supports that are required, and how can we provide that platform for those to be shared?
Mm-hmm.
Because nowadays, people are so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's intersections in all of these.
Yeah.
And some people, check all of those boxes, and where do they go?
Yeah.
So we're trying, and I'm not going to lie, there was some pushback because, there was a feeling that we might lose the momentum around women in the trades. And we spoke to the women in the trades.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were there. They're the ones that told us we needed to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
So we're really happy to be bold on this. And we're hoping others are going to follow.
Yeah.
And it took it was a big leap for us. We're changing our whole branding, which we had worked so hard to build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So including the name and so that's the way so the conference is in 2025, supporting equity in the trades conference. So so there's a lot to do. It can't be done snapping a finger. So
no. Yeah.
It's a reinvention, but on the other hand, talk about that as you did. But it's exciting, strength in numbers, and also new talent, great speakers, inspiring speakers. A lot can be done by somebody, that after a speech they want to, break through walls and knock down doors. Like those, that's the lifeblood of some movements. So if you get some new talent and I know I'm also looking at liaison with companies, and making there's more success stories to take advantage of. So it's let's see, strength in numbers and strength in people will add to your movement.
An inclusive work site is the work. No, it's okay. An inclusive that is strength in numbers and making sure that happens on work sites. And whether you identify as a woman or you're gender diverse or inclusion is inclusion. Now there are some specificities around what inclusion looks like for those different groups, those marginalized groups. But in general, we can all benefit from learning from each other.
Yeah.
From what works for one group and what works for the other group. So we're hoping that people are going to buy in. I'm not going to lie. This is a big risk for us.
Yeah.
Leaving our really well-known supporting women in trades branding.
Yeah.
But we're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So just in terms of people, those discussions that you had before you adopted this, one can imagine, conversations going in different directions, and there are obviously specific issues related to only one community, such as maybe pregnancy of coming back from pregnancy or living in remote areas if you're an Indigenous person. Hopefully people can learn lessons from the way people reach solutions. So it's more ideas and more solutions and discussions, and it's nice to be part of a big group rather than a marginal group with just a few people. It's so good ideas, and moving forward, will be what that's the way it's going to be for you. So that's great.
We're hoping, and we have new branding, as you may have seen on our website in the release. New logo, new everything. So we have 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years to do this. Yeah. And it was pretty monumental to announce it at the Canadian Human Rights Museum.
Yeah.
It was really well received. I think it's time that there's an appetite for this. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to it.
The end of the women's initiative, so you may say, well, okay, well, sometimes you're moving on, but was it a successful endeavor? You talked about growth, where you had strategies in place, and kind of institutionally you had strength, setting targets. How was the growth? Was it a success? The numbers still are at 4.5%. Yeah, so everything's great except every year you're hoping to have that leap, I guess.
Well, I'll just clarify a few things. We're not letting go of the women in trades, the increasing the number of women in the trades strategy. That we will continue, because there is the number is to get it by 15% by 2030, and we're right now at 5. We went from 4.5 to 5 in the last decade, or whatever that number is on our website. So that needs to continue. But what we're finding is that the reasons why that number doesn't change is because we need to address the very serious barriers to retention. Mm-hmm. And the completion rates, for example, when we look at apprenticeships, women versus men. So that needs to continue to be looked at. But what we know is that anytime we will address completion barriers or barriers to retention in the trades due to non-inclusion, due to discrimination, whatever is worked out there will benefit the women, right? Yeah. So there will be a direct link to increasing that number. So what we're doing in terms of our event and expanding the reach and including more people is not going to be a detriment to what we're doing. It's in fact going to help. Mm-hmm. And so we're not leaving that. We're keeping that. We're still going to try and get to 15%. But those retention barriers are applicable to other marginalized groups as well. So it's all going to be part of the same movement.
Yeah. So you've got DEI initiatives, and as I say, dealing with both recruitment and retention, creating respectful, welcoming workplaces. That works for every community.
Exactly.
So so best practices and having success stories from all of them will so that'll be quite a conference in 2025. And
we're already starting.
Yeah.
Planning, and we think it's going to be really successful.
Great. Okay. So great to talk to you, and good luck. And
nice talking to you.
We'll talk again. Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. Thanks for your interest.
If you'd like to hear other episodes of the Construction Record Podcast, you can listen to us on Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify, as well as on the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce websites. Thanks for listening.